Let me ask you something honest. When was the last time you memorized a phone number or figure out a driving direction without Waze or Google Maps? Most of us cannot do these things anymore. Tama ba? We outsourced those skills to technology years ago. And now the exact same thing is starting to happen with our most valuable career skills: thinking, writing, analysis, and decision making. So the question that more and more professionals are quietly asking is, if I keep using AI to do my thinking, will I eventually forget how to think? I'm Jerry Ilao, the co-founder of Tarki and Otoma, and the founding president of the Philippine AI Business Association. And in this video, I'm going to give you an honest answer and a practical framework so that you can use AI aggressively without losing the skills that make you irreplaceable. Psychologists actually have a name for what is happening to us right now. It is called cognitive offloading. Our brains are wired to save energy. So whenever we find a new tool that can do the mental heavy lifting for us, whether it is a calculator for math, a GPS for navigation, or a simple spell check for writing, we naturally offload the work to the machine. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. It makes us faster. Tama ba? But when you offload too much, you fall into what I call the dependency trap. So the pattern is always the same. So the tool does the work, you stop practicing, and then the skill quietly disappears. And you do not realize it until the tool is suddenly unavailable, and then you are stuck. And now that applies to AI. So if you use ChatGPT to write every single email, will you eventually struggle to write clearly on your own? Or if you use AI to make every decision framework, will you forget how to think through messy problems independently? Yan ang dependency trap. It is very real. But fortunately, it is also completely avoidable. So, will AI make you lose your skills? Yes, but only if you use it as a replacement for thinking instead of a tool that enhances it. Think about cooking. When you are learning, you follow a recipe step by step. So, exact measurements, exact timing, and exact ingredients. And that is fine. The recipe helps you get started. But if you follow a recipe for every single meal, even the ones that you have cooked 100 times, you will never develop your instinct. You cannot adjust when an ingredient is missing, and you panic when the recipe is unavailable. And you never learn to trust your own taste. But if you use that recipe as a guide for new dishes or mga complex techniques, and you gradually start using your own palate, eventually you can walk into the kitchen and cook without one. The recipe made you better, it did not make you dependent. And AI is exactly the same. The question is not, should I use AI? That is like asking if you should use a recipe or not. Of course you should. The question is, am I still developing my own taste? And you know the fear that you have? That you might lose that skill if you become too dependent on AI? It is real. And doctors call it atrophy. Atrophy is when something weakens and wastes away. Not because it was damaged, but simply because it stopped being used. And it applies to mental skills just as much as physical ones. So, kung hindi mo ginagamit, mawawala. And based on what I'm seeing across businesses and executive teams, there are 3 critical skills most at risk at atrophying right now. So let's discuss it one by one. Skill number 1 is critical thinking. When AI gives you an answer, it sounds confident, it sounds polished, di ba? And that is exactly the danger. The moment you stop asking, is this actually correct? Or what is this missing? Then you have stopped thinking critically. You are now just a copy-paste operator. And ang pinakadelikado ay hindi yung maling sagot ng AI, ang pinakadelikado ay yung tinatanggap mo na lang kung ano ang binigay niya at hindi mo na chinek. So aside from critical thinking, the next skill is writing and communication. If AI writes all your reports and proposals, your own writing muscles atrophies. Writing is how you organize your thoughts. It is how you persuade. So when a leader sends a message, people can feel whether it came from a real person or kaya a machine. Authenticity is a leadership skill, so do not outsource it entirely. And the third skill is judgment. AI is great at giving you options and frameworks, but the ability to look at the messy, ambiguous, or mga real-world business problems and decide what to do, that requires experience, intuition, and human judgment. If you always let AI structure your thinking, you stop developing that business instinct. So as a business leader, make sure you protect those three skills: critical thinking, writing and communication, and problem solving and judgment. So how do you use AI aggressively without falling into the dependency trap? I use a very simple framework, and I'd like it to share with you. I call it the 70-30 rule. So let AI do the 70% of the heavy lifting. That's the research, the AI draft, the data gathering, the formatting. And that is actually what AI is built for. But you do the other 30% yourself. So the judgment, the editing, and the final decision. And that 30% is where your value actually lives. Now, the 70-30 is not an exact science. Some tasks will be 90-10, some will be 50-50. But the point is, always keep something for yourself. Never hand over 100% of any task that requires thinking. Here is how it looks in practice. So, for example, you're drafting a proposal. So let AI do the 70%, so the structure and the first draft, and then you do the 30%. That's rewriting the key arguments in your voice and making the judgment calls on pricing. If you are analyzing a report, let AI do the 70%. That's summarizing the data, and then you do the 30% again. That's interpreting what those numbers mean for your specific business goals. And for example, if you're doing a meeting preparation, let the AI compile the agenda and the background info. And then you decide the actual strategy and the one thing you need to communicate. Huwag mong isurrender ang 30% na yan. Because that's your taste, and dyan nakataya yung future career mo. Here's my challenge for you today. Pick one task that you have been fully delegating to AI, just one, and do it yourself from scratch to finish. Cook without a recipe and see if the taste is still there. The next week, apply the 70-30 rule to everything. Let AI do the heavy lifting, but you keep the thinking and the judgment for yourself. And remember, the 70-30 rule works alongside with the coffee shop test and the ATM framework from our earlier videos. So if you haven't watched those videos, I'll link it in the description below. And together, these give you a complete system: what not to type, how to govern your tools, and how to protect your own skills without using AI. If this video made you think, share it with someone on your team who might be leaning on AI a little too hard. Subscribe for more practical AI guidance for business leaders. No hype, no fear, just clarity. Again, this is Jerry Ilao, the co-founder of Tarki and Otoma, and the founding president of the Philippine AI Business Association. And I'll see you in the next video.